The wind howled across the red plains of Zarkon 7, carrying dust that stung the eyes of any careless traveler. High above, strange shadows moved among the jagged rocks, but most explorers avoided this place entirely, calling it a graveyard for the foolish. Among the few who dared to enter was Kale, a human with a spark in his eyes that no danger could dim. Other humans had laughed at him when he first suggested exploring the territory of the universe's deadliest four-legged beasts, calling him reckless and foolish. "They are too strong, too clever, and too fast for anyone to survive," they said. But Kale only smiled quietly, adjusting the straps of his exploration pack, and stepped forward, ignoring the warnings. The first signs of the beasts were subtle: a rustle in the rocks, a low growl carried by the wind, a shadow that moved faster than anything human eyes could follow. Kale crouched behind a jagged stone and watched carefully, noting how the creatures hunted in silence, always in pairs or trios, and never breaking the rules of their deadly game. He had read all the reports, studied their patterns, and still, no human had ever returned from this zone alive. Yet, something about Kale was different. Where others saw fear, he saw opportunity. Where others hesitated, he moved with purpose, learning, watching, and preparing. As he walked further, the landscape became more dangerous. Sharp rocks jutted out from the red soil like broken teeth, and the wind carried a strange metallic scent that made him cough. A sudden screech made him freeze, heart pounding, as a massive shadow darted across the distance, disappearing into the dust. Kale knew that was one of the deadliest four-legged beasts, a creature that could crush bone with a single bite, yet he did not retreat. Instead, he smiled under his helmet and whispered to himself, "If I understand them, maybe I can survive." Hours passed. Kale studied footprints, droppings, and claw marks on trees, learning the beast's hunting routes and resting zones. He marked his path carefully, always staying just out of reach, always thinking one step ahead. At one point, he stopped to rest near a shallow canyon, unaware that he was being watched. A pair of glowing eyes appeared on the cliff above him, fixed on Kale, unblinking, calculating. Most humans would have panicked, run, or tried to fight, but Kale stayed still, breathing slowly, letting the creature measure him. For a long moment, it was a standoff, the hunter and the human, neither moving, each testing the other. Then the beast moved back, disappearing into the shadows, leaving Kale unharmed. A shiver ran down his spine, not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing he had survived the first test. He understood then that this planet, these creatures, and this mission would require every ounce of his courage and wit. But Kale had something none of the others had, a mind that could see beyond fear and a heart that refused to obey the rules of the universe. As night fell, the red sky darkened, and strange lights flickered in the distance. Kale set up his small camp, careful to hide his position. He looked at the stars and thought about how tiny humans were in this vast universe. Yet here he was, alone against creatures designed to kill without mercy, ready to break every expectation. And deep down, he knew something that no one else did. The universe had rules, yes, but perhaps humans were made to break them. With that thought, Kale closed his eyes for a few hours of rest, listening to the rustling of the beasts in the distance. He was laughed at by everyone who said he would fail. But Kale smiled in the dark, knowing that tomorrow, the real challenge would begin. And he would face it, not as a victim, but as the human who dared to defy the deadliest predators in the universe. Kale woke to the sound of distant growls echoing through the canyon. The wind had shifted, carrying the scent of the beasts closer, sharper, more dangerous than before. He tightened his gloves and stepped out of his small camp, scanning the horizon carefully. Every shadow seemed alive, every movement a threat. But Kale did not panic. He had a plan. He had studied these creatures, mapped their routes, and learned their hunting rules. Every human before him had ignored the signs and paid with their lives. Kale was determined not to be one of them. He moved quietly, keeping low among the rocks, every sense alert. The first footprints appeared in the soft red soil, large, clawed, and heavy. Kale knelt, tracing them with a finger, noticing how precise they were, how careful the beasts were to avoid leaving a pattern that could be followed. "They are smarter than anyone thinks," he muttered to himself. "They follow their rules, but what if I don't?" As he walked further, he found signs of past hunts, remains of creatures too large for any human to handle. He felt a pang of fear but swallowed it quickly. Fear was a tool, he reminded himself, not a weakness. Suddenly, a low growl vibrated through the rocks nearby, stopping him cold. A shadow moved across the canyon floor, bigger than anything Cale had imagined. The beast's eyes glowed, calculating, watching his every movement. Most humans would have screamed, run, or frozen. Cale stayed calm, remembering every report, every failed human attempt, every rule the beasts followed. The creature stepped closer, sniffing the air, its claws scraping the rock. Cale crouched behind a boulder, heart racing, and remembered a small trick he had read about. Humans could sometimes confuse the beasts with movement patterns. He moved slowly, just enough to distract the predator, then froze. The beast tilted its head, confused, then lunged. Cale rolled to the side, narrowly escaping a deadly strike, the ground shattering where the beast's paw had hit. He barely had time to catch his breath before it circled back, faster this time, eyes locked on him. For hours, Cale danced with the creature, testing his limits, learning its patterns, and staying just out of reach. Every encounter was tense, every mistake could be fatal. Yet, Cale noticed something fascinating. The beasts were careful not to break their own rules. They never attacked from behind a cliff, never crossed a boundary, and always hunted in a calculated way. Humans, Cale realized, were unpredictable. That unpredictability could be a weapon if used correctly. As the sun dipped behind the jagged peaks, Cale found a narrow ridge to rest. He traced the scars on the rocks and realized that the beasts hunted in packs with a hierarchy, a leader, and followers. He smiled to himself. Most humans would never understand this. They only saw monsters, not patterns. Suddenly, the quiet night exploded with movement, a group of beasts emerging from the shadows. Cale froze, knowing that this time, the danger was real. They were more than one, more cunning than he had imagined, yet he felt no fear, only the thrill of a challenge. One of the beasts stepped forward, larger than the rest, its gaze fixed on Cale. The air was tense, silent except for the growls and the crackle of rocks underfoot. Cale whispered to himself, "I will survive. I will outsmart you." And for the first time, he knew that he was not just fighting for survival. He was about to prove that humans could challenge the rules of the universe itself. The night was quiet, but Cale's mind raced. He could still feel the weight of those glowing eyes watching him from the darkness. Every sound, the crack of a rock, the whisper of the wind, even his own heartbeat, was amplified. He had survived the first encounters, but he knew the deadliest beast would not let him go easily. The rules were clear, the beasts hunted, humans died, and nothing could change that, except him. Cale began experimenting, moving differently this time. He climbed a narrow ridge where the terrain gave him an advantage. From above, he could see the patterns of their hunting, the way they communicated through growls, gestures, and shadows. He realized that while the beasts followed their rules, humans did not have to. A thought sparked in his mind, unpredictability could be his weapon. He set small traps, using rocks and fallen branches to distract the predators. One beast approached a trap, its massive paw snapping at the wrong spot. Cale ducked behind a boulder, holding his breath. The creature snarled, confused, then moved on, leaving Cale unharmed. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. He began mapping the beast's behaviors, taking notes in his mind, testing what worked and what didn't. Hours passed, and the beasts became bolder, circling closer, testing him in return. Cale had learned to read their intentions, their pauses, the flick of a tail, the shift of a paw. He used every advantage, rocks for cover, shadows to hide, the wind to carry his scent away. Every move was careful, precise, yet daring. He was no longer just surviving. He was learning, adapting, evolving. Then the first major test came. A massive predator, larger than the rest, stepped forward, blocking his path. It growled, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the ground. Most humans would have frozen in terror, but Cale stayed calm, thinking fast. He noticed a weak spot, a small gap between its foreleg and body where it could not easily strike. Using the shadows, he moved sideways, keeping just out of reach. The beast lunged, claws missing him by inches, and he rolled to safety. Cale smiled, heart racing. This was no longer about survival alone. It was about understanding the rules of the universe and bending them. Every misstep could be his last, yet every clever move brought him closer to mastering his opponent. He began leaving trails that misled the predators, making them chase shadows while he observed from safety. The beasts were strong, fast, and deadly, but Kale was smarter, and human intelligence was a weapon they could not predict. As the sun rose, painting the red plains with blood-orange light, Kale paused on a ridge. He looked at the beasts below, circling, confused by his clever tactics. A grin spread across his face. He was alive, stronger, smarter, and ready for the real challenge. He whispered to himself, "They follow the rules. I don't have to." In that moment, Kale knew that humans were capable of more than survival. They could change the game entirely. The deadliest creatures in the universe had learned something important. Unpredictability could strike fear even in the strongest of predators. Kale took a deep breath, looking at the horizon where the beasts lurked. Tomorrow, he would push his limits further, challenge them more directly. And one day soon, he would break the ultimate rule, the rule that no human had ever dared to ignore. For now, he rested, but his mind never stopped, planning, calculating, waiting. The universe was vast, dangerous, and merciless. But Kale had one advantage: he was human, and humans were meant to defy the impossible. The air was thick with tension as Kale approached the heart of the hunting grounds. Every step he took echoed against the jagged rocks, every breath seemed louder in the stillness. He could feel the presence of the main predator before he even saw it. A creature of unimaginable size, for massive legs ending in claws that could tear through steel, eyes glowing like molten fire. It was the alpha of the deadliest beasts, the one that had ended every human life that dared to enter its territory. Kale's heart raced, but he did not falter. This was the moment he had prepared for. Every observation, every trick, every narrow escape had led to this confrontation. The beast roared, a sound so deep and powerful that the ground shook beneath Kale's feet. Its growl carried a warning, a rule of the universe that humans were meant to obey. Most humans would have run or surrendered, but Kale stood his ground, analyzing the creature, studying its movements, its patterns, its confidence. He noticed its rhythm, the way it shifted weight before striking, the way it relied on brute force and intimidation. And then he saw the opportunity, the weakness no other human had ever noticed. Kale moved slowly, deliberately, testing the beast's patience. The creature lunged, claws snapping through the air where Kale had stood moments before. He rolled to the side, letting the beast strike empty ground. Kale ran, zigzagging between rocks, leading the predator toward a narrow canyon he had scouted earlier. The beast followed, furious, underestimating the human's mind, thinking strength alone would end him. Inside the canyon, Kale set his plan into motion. He triggered a series of natural traps, loose rocks, hidden ledges, and unstable cliffs, forcing the beast to dodge and stumble. The alpha roared in confusion and anger, unable to predict the human's clever maneuvers. Kale kept his focus, never panicking, never breaking rhythm. He understood something no beast could grasp. Humans did not have to follow the rules. Where they relied on strength, he relied on intelligence and cunning. Where they followed patterns, he created chaos. And then it happened. The beast lunged one final time, thinking it had trapped Kale against a cliff. But Kale leaped, rolling under a fallen boulder, and triggered a chain reaction of falling rocks that blocked the predator's path. The alpha stumbled, caught off guard, unable to attack without breaking its own rule. Kale stood on higher ground, chest heaving, eyes locked on the defeated beast below. For the first time, a human had survived an encounter with the deadliest predator and lived to tell the tale. Kale exhaled slowly, adrenaline coursing through him. He realized something profound. The universe had rules, yes, but humans had a rule of their own: ingenuity, courage, and defiance. The alpha beast, frustrated and confused, retreated into the shadows. Kale knew it would remember him, just as he would remember this victory. No human had ever broken the rule before, and yet here he was, standing tall against impossible odds. As the sun rose over Zarkon 7, painting the red plains in gold, Kale looked across the valley. He had faced the deadliest predator and survived. The universe had laughed at humans, thought them weak, thought them fragile. But Kale had proven something else. Humans could endure, adapt, and triumph where others failed. He whispered to the wind, "Rules are meant to be challenged, and we humans will always find a way. The beasts might be the deadliest in the universe, but Kale had shown that one human, clever and daring, could change everything. And in that moment, the legend of the human who broke the ultimate rule was born. The morning sun bathed Zarkon 7 in a warm, golden light, but the air still carried tension. Kale stood on the ridge, looking down at the territory he had survived. The beasts were gone for now, retreating into the shadows, but Kale knew they would remember him. He was not just a survivor, he was a human who had broken the deadliest rule of the universe. Other humans, scattered across the exploration zones, would hear of his victory. And perhaps, finally, they would stop laughing at the species they had once underestimated. He walked carefully through the red plains, examining the territory. Every step reminded him of the battles fought, the near misses, the moments when death had seemed certain. And yet, he had survived, not because of strength alone, but because of intelligence, courage, and determination. The beasts had relied on rules and predictability, but Kale had relied on something stronger, human ingenuity. As he reached a narrow canyon, Kale paused and looked back at the ridge where the Alpha had attacked. The memory of glowing eyes and powerful claws made his heart race, but he smiled. He had faced what no human had ever faced and had walked away alive. He had turned the hunters into the hunted, not by fighting harder, but by thinking smarter. That was the essence of being human, he realized, the ability to survive, adapt, and overcome any obstacle. Later, Kale set up a temporary camp and sent messages to other explorers. They would come to learn from his journey, to follow the path he had carved through danger. And they would remember the lesson. In a universe full of rules, humans were the ones who could break them. The alpha beasts might still rule their territory, but Kale had proven that human courage could challenge even the deadliest predator. As the red sun set over the horizon, Kale looked up at the sky. Stars glittered like tiny sparks of hope, and he felt a deep sense of pride. He knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of threats, but also full of opportunities. And humanity, clever and fearless, had just begun to carve its place among the stars. He whispered to himself, "We are humans. We do not follow rules. We make them." The beasts of Zarkon 7 had learned a hard lesson, and so had the universe. Humans were not weak, fragile, or foolish. They were survivors, fighters, and masters of their own fate. And Kale, the human who had dared to defy the ultimate predator, would be remembered for generations to come. The wind carried his words across the plains, through the canyons, and into the shadows where the alpha beast lurked. And somewhere, deep in the dark, it paused, sensing a power it could not understand. Humans were dangerous, more dangerous than any predator in the universe. And Kale had just proven why. The legend of the human who broke the rule of the deadliest four-legged beasts had begun. And the universe would never be the same again.